Let's dive into the details. On June 25, 2024, thousands of Kenyans took to the streets of Nairobi in a massive protest against the newly passed Kenya Finance Bill 2024. This bill proposed a substantial tax increase, including a 16% tax on goods and services for specialized goods, for specialized hospitals and higher import taxes. The public outcry was immediate and intense. The protest escalated quickly as demonstrators stormed the Kenyan parliament building in a dramatic turn of events. Parts of the building were set on fire, and significant property damage occurred. The police responded with force using live ammunition to disperse the crowds. Tragically, this resulted in 19 deaths and over 200 injuries. The aftermath of the protests saw President William Ruto withdrawing the controversial finance bill the very next day. This move was seen as a direct response to the overwhelming public dissent and the tragic loss of life. Now, we look at this happening and we think, what implications does this have for Africa? What implications does this have for Nigeria and the rest of the world? Mr. Tochukwu.
All right, thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. I am Ogwambaka Tochukwu. We are here to discuss recent events that happened in Kenya on the 25th of June, 2024. Now, this is a watershed event, not just in Kenya, but in Africa. We need to understand it very clearly. And violence, widespread violence in Kenya is not new. Can be traced to the colonial times, okay? The Kenyan independence was founded on violence between the Mau Mau movement and the British forces that lasted at least 8 years until their independence in 1963. And then in 2007 general elections, when the incumbent president Kibaki was elected, declared the winner of the election, the opposition Raila Odinga rallied the people, saying that the declaration of that person as the winner was illegal. There was fraud in the election. So it led to a massive protest and also led to thousands of deaths. But that had an ethnic orientation, though. But in this context, we are looking at a socioeconomic context. Following or should I say, barely 2 years after President William Ruto was elected in 2020, we seem to have lost credence. We seem to have lost the mandate of the people. This tax law was introduced last year. The process began last year, but recently, about last week, it was concluded when it passed the third reading and then supported by the president. So the argument here is that the president wanted, when he came to power, he inherited a huge debt, about a trillion shillings given to him by his predecessors. So, but the people here are protesting against this law, saying that this law might bring a hike in the basic fundamental commodities or household edibles. So, but the argument of the president was that the country needed to offset the debt bequeathed to it by the predecessors. But this event that happened, at least there are 3 things that we should point out, because many people in Africa believe that the power of election is the only strand of power at the disposal of the people in a democracy. But that is not true, because the recent event in Kenya has proved otherwise, that there are so many ways the people can express themselves. The power of election is most common. In Nigeria, for example, every 4 years, we demonstrate that power. But apart from that, there are other strands of power. We have the power of recall or referendum. In Nigerian Constitution, I think Section 69 gave the people the power of recall. You see the process of recall by which a legislator or a lawmaker might be removed from power, from office, or from the Senate. Then also we have the power of protest. So this is what I meant.
Mr. Tochukwu, over the years, we've had several anti-people, several bills and several laws that have been termed anti-people. Recently, we saw the electricity tariff bill, and we've seen several uprisings from several other African nations, Niger, Burkina Faso, and the likes. Do you think some of these uprisings, it's becoming frequent? I mean, this is like some kind of a negative trend, and if what are Africans? I mean, you see African leaders doing wrong at this point? Because we saw what happened with NSAS. It was like an uprising from the people. Same thing with this recent June 25 protests. I mean, what is actually going wrong?
But one thing I love about it is that the reaction of the government, the NSAS movement, following the NSAS movement, you can recall that the government withdrew or suspended the NSAS, that is the body NSAS. It was disbanded. Then, following the protest in Kenya, the tax law, controversial tax law, was also suspended. So that means that the government is responsive, even though after the suspension of the tax laws, the people still sustain their protests because they were now clamoring for his removal. They are saying that the president, William Ruto, must leave office, that he has lost credibility. People have lost faith in him. So one thing I must say is this, that governments in Africa must learn something from this, because democracy in Africa seems to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. There is a clock of democracy, but inside that clock, there is empty. We have, just look at what happened in the 2023 general election in Nigeria. Everything was provided. The clock now was the electoral bill, the provision of BVAS and all that. But what about the institutional corruption epitomized by the political class? So if these things are still there, other things are just a storm in a teacup. So the main thing is that the people protest, express themselves democratically, as has been witnessed in Kenya. And then the government respond positively to that protest. But what I don't like that happened is the killing of more than 20 persons. Do you know that in Kenyan constitution, before a president would military against any unrest or insurrection in the country, it must get an approval from the parliament, National Assembly, and the Senate. But despite this provision of the constitution, President William Ruto deployed the military against unarmed groups. And it was only when there was an alleged attack on these protesters that they were enraged, they were infuriated. And then just like what happened in the US in January 6th, 2021, following the election in 2020, a mob navigated their way into the Capitol here. You see, but that was politically motivated. So, but this one, we're talking about an economic oppression affecting the whole country, everybody in the country. So this is watershed event. It means a lot. And I believe that it will henceforward impact positively on whatever actions and policies other governments in Nigeria and elsewhere in Kenya, in every part of the country, because Africa's democracy has been in shambles over the years. So that is it.
African democracy being in shambles, I'd like to ask a question. Is it that can we say for a fact that Africans have lost faith in democracy? Again, I make instances, I make like references to the recent coups in Niger, Burkina Faso, and some of these other African countries. Can we say that Africans are losing faith in democracy? We've seen several uprisings, not just the NSAS events, not just the June 25 protests. I mean, would these things happen? Is it that Africans are waking up and Are we like going back? Is this like a backward trajectory, sort of going back to the days of military rule and all? Because the first stage is protest. The people know that something is going wrong, and once the people take laws into their hands, it's really going to be difficult to control. Can we see, is this a case of Africans losing faith in democracy?
Um, I love your point. As you see, when you compare democratic regimes, or let me use the word administration, because regime simply means that there is an aspect of autocracy. But when you compare democratic administration with military regimes in most African countries, you discover that there is absolutely no difference between the two. So what you just told me is the thing. African people are losing faith in the democracy. Why? Because the democracy is, like I said before, a clock, wolf in shepherd's clothing. Our political leaders are wolves in shepherd's clothing. So they wear the cloak of democracy. While inside that clock, there are semblances of autocracy and authoritarianism. So that is the thing. Thank you for mentioning what happened in Francophone countries like Niger, Burkina Faso. It's a typical example of, it demonstrates the fact that the people of Africa have completely lost faith in the democratic, so-called democratic government. So,
Is this Africans losing faith in democracy? Is this a bad thing or a good thing for us? Because I say this from a place of concern, right? We know what happened during the military rule. We know the trust, insubordination, and iron fist that was used. This is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I have told you that it is better to choose a lesser evil. Better to choose a lesser evil. So it is not that we are supporting violence against the state. The state comprises four elements. We have the people, government, territory, and sovereignty. So if the people are revolting against the government is an agent of the state. So we are not justifying violence. All we are saying is that the people are tired. The people are tired. In Nigeria, for example, since 1999, over 20 years or thereabout, we still talk about intense poverty, insecurity has heightened. So it may not be a good thing in terms of violence aspect, but I believe that when the people are oppressed for too long, it is a natural right, it's an organic reaction. That's what I believe. When people are oppressed, it is an organic, in fact, it's natural, it's uncontrollable. It may not be justified by law, but this is democracy in action. That's what happened in other places. It happened in Philippines in 1986. It happened in France in 1789. It happened all over the place, so many countries. So I think this is a call. It is a call for the government to reform their ways, to reform their actions and policies.
Yes, definitely. It's African leaders need to wake up. African leaders need to be up and doing. And for sure, the recent event, it's a call, like you said, for African leaders to wake up and try to pass laws that are people friendly, and of course put their people first. Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation this morning with Mr. Tochukwu discussing that uprising in Kenya on June 25 and what it means for Nigeria and the rest of Africa. And of course, if you want to join us and contribute and give your 2 pence or 2 cents, like it said, you can. The floor is open. All you have to do is indicate, and we'll let you speak. Now, moving forward, what are some of what are some of the things that governments across Africa should put in place so that aside, okay, like you already noted that we need to make people-friendly laws. What are some of the other things you think we should do so that Africa doesn't go back to sort of the dark age? You know, I call it dark age because I wasn't born. I wasn't born during that period, but yeah,
Yes.
I knew what it was like. And from the way I see it, it's like going back to a dark place. So what should African leaders do better?
African leaders, first of all, we have to redefine the concept of democracy. Democracy means government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So they should start, first of all, by defining what democracy means. Because if you do not acknowledge the meaning of democracy, the meaning of sovereignty of the people, there is no way you will acquire the political will and commitment to do other things. That is the first thing to do. So when you have acknowledged this fact, then you start by being responsive to the needs of the people. The laws you make, the policies you make, should be people-centered and people-oriented. So many people are in poverty, abject poverty in Africa. What are the things? What are the policies? What policies are you implementing or are you making to see that this poverty orientation subsides to the barest minimum? So, by respecting democracy, it also means to respect the power of protest. The people have the power to protest whatever policy, because the dignity of the government resides in how you react to the people when they revolt against your policy or your government. That is the dignity of any government, anywhere in the world. So how you react to protest matters a lot. If you react with high-handedness, it means that you have become a dictator. So, but when you see people revolt and then you respond to them in a kind way, you say, I am so sorry, I'm going to reverse this law, then they will see you as a democratic leader. So I believe that the government in power must be responsive. We must define what democracy is, then they must institute policies and laws that are people-centered. So I believe that is it.
Yes, redefine democracy and make laws that are people friendly. That's the watchword from Mr. Tochukwu, and we really hope that African leaders will get the memo sort of and be up and doing, because a lot of things are going wrong. A lot of Africa is backward, and this is 2024, and we are still the poverty capital of the world, and we are still making laws that are anti-people, that are not people friendly. So we need to do better. We need to do better as a nation. We need to do better as a continent, and of course as a people. Again,
and I want to say something else, like what I said earlier about the strength of democratic power belonging to the people. Because so many people are naive, so many people do not know other powers they could wield against the government. All they know is the power of election. And some of them have even lost faith in election, like in Nigeria, if not for the movement of the obedience. The 2023 election would have been like the others in the past years. So the people must know their other rights. The rights of recall. It's in the Constitution, Section 69 of the Constitution, the power to recall. Because the parliament, the legislature is more important than the executive. Why? Because it is on that platform that laws are made, laws that will govern all and sundry in a country. So if a senate, a lawmaker is not doing well, or is not instituting or providing policies or bills that are not in consonant with the wishes and interests of the people in that constituency can club together to unseat him from the Senate or from the parliament. That is one. That is two. Then number three is the power of protest, as we have seen already in Kenya and even in Nigeria in 2020. The people have the power to protest. It is in the Constitution of Nigeria, Section 40, the right to peaceful assembly. Even in the Kenya Constitution, Section 37, empowers the Kenyan people to protest, demonstrate, as long as it is peaceful. It is peaceful and, of course, well ordered. So these basic three strands of power in democracy, the people must be oriented to them, must be acquainted with them. And when that happens, democracy will be up to par with what obtains in other countries in the West and elsewhere. So thank you.
Good words spoken there, Mr. Tochukwu. You spoke about the laws following the dictates of the Constitution and the rule of law. And recently and over the years, we've seen how these laws have been downplayed, how so much disrespect has been, how several times there's been some disrespect on the rule of law in Nigeria, and for some other African nations. Of course, that is something we have to work on as a people and all. Thank you very, very much. It's been an interesting conversation this morning with the Kenyan situation, what it means for the rest of Africa, what it means for Nigeria in particular. The electricity tariff bill. I think this uprising started as a result of the finance bill.
The one in Kenya.
The Kenyan.
Exactly.
The Kenyan started as a result of the finance bill. We also have the electricity tariff bill, the increase and all, but we've not.
And more important also, because the issue of wastage and lack of frugality among governments in Nigeria is also a recipe for disaster and anger. Because in Kenya, it is not just that the government has approved a new tax law, but also there are other ways that the government could have employed to deal with the issue of debt. And that is what their P2B has been calling for: cost of governance, reduction in cost of governance. The people of Kenya have been saying that the government of Kenya is wasteful. In fact, they gave the president Ruto a new name. His new name is the Flying President. Why? Because he flies, he takes many foreigns almost on a daily basis. Wastage, unnecessary travels, using public money to do unnecessary things. So government should have a cut on how they spend public money. So it's very important I say this.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining. It's been an amazing hour talking about some of these things and what it means for Africa and all of us. We can only hope that the message is gotten and that there's significant progress made, right? Yeah. If you want to contribute to the conversation, this is the time to do it. If not, we call it a day here. Thank you for joining us, viewers. We see you next time. Have a great day.
Kevin, stop the live transmit or you transfer back the host to me.